All right, welcome to this quick overview of some of the most recent changes in query and import in the Neo4j Workspace. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some of the things that have changed in the last few months, or some of the most recent things that have changed in the last few months. So I'm going to load the tried and tested Northwind dataset. So first thing you'll notice is we've now got green check marks denoting complete mappings. So you'll no longer get dashed outlines for things that aren't mapped. They'll be solid, and instead you'll get a green check mark when everything is successfully completely mapped. This is because we're trying to better support modeling as a concept in its own right in this capability, and you'll see more on that in the coming weeks and months when we're looking to provide the ability to introspect the model from a pre-existing database that already has data within it, but more of that to come in future. You'll notice we've got some new icons as well. So preview is now an eye, hopefully not too cryptic. And a simple but long time coming thing, run import now has stop facilities. So you'll be able to stop your import partway through, and you'll get an indication of how far the import has progressed and where it stopped and the steps that weren't carried out. So you'll get a view of, what's happened here. Now this particular import I've run before, so you'll see that no nodes are created because the data has already been loaded. Other things to note, these have been in there for a little while, but we have slightly different from and to mapping UI, and we have the ability to filter files before importing them. So if you only want to restrict a file to only include a subset of it, we could, for example, have, let's see here, ship city in the orders file. We could, Reims in France, if we type that here, this would filter out just the 5 rows where things are being shipped to Reims, the town. So those are only used in the import. Not a particularly good example of that, using that feature, but this could be quite a useful feature to use if you've got a file that maybe contains many different relationship types. You could filter that file on the relationship types and use the same file to map different relationships in different parts of your data model. So I think that's primarily it for imports. Now moving on to query, let's have a look at some of the things in there. So this has been in for a little while now, but we have saved cipher functionality, the ability to create folders, and then when you write a query, I'm going to write the world's least exciting query, but you have the ability to create saved cipher. So I return 1, and you can also optionally put it in folders. So let's put it in a new folder and save that there, so the queries go in there. And we've also done some nice things so that if you make a new query, I return 2, let's give it a name, I return 2, it'll remember the most recently used folder and chuck things that you create in the same folder, which is pretty handy there. And you can of course edit these bits of saved cipher, reorganize, put them in different folders, rerun them, or just insert them into the editor without running. And we now have the ability to export as well. So if you export this content, you'll get a CSV file. I probably won't bore you with opening it, but it's a CSV file that contains the structure of the folders and the files, which you can then import again using this complementary feature. We have added explain capability, similar to that you get in browser. So if we maybe do a slightly less trivial query to demonstrate this, let's do a query that finds some purchase relationships. So if I prefix this with an explain, you'll see that you now get the query plan there, and you can kind of collapse and expand. And for more complex queries and for profile, you'll get kind of additional information on DB hits there, just as you've been used to. So that's some big improvements there. Now, also available coming soon, this has not quite been released yet, but it is imminent. We have the experimental toggle here for a new visualization type. So this is a new visualization type that shares same underpinnings as Explore. So here's our standard visualization here that we know and love with the properties panel. We can now turn on the experimental visualization, which is ultimately going to replace the existing visualization in browser or query, when we're happy with it. And you'll see it looks much more familiar and similar to the visualization you get in Blue. Now, there are still some kind of things we want to tweak to bring full capability to browser users. But one thing you will notice is that the visualization is now much more performant for larger graphs. So if I just look at any types of relationships there, and let's actually up the limit a bit more, let's maybe bring back up to 500 relationships, you'll see that the visualization is generally kind of much more performant. So if I switch back to that, I can move, actually zoom in a bit, I can move some of these nodes around, and if I switch to the outgoing visualization, you'll see that it's still not bad, but you'll see a bit of lagginess with the interaction there. And if I try and zoom in, there's generally a lot more lagginess, and trying to move things around is a bit more onerous, and you'll see kind of a much lower frame rate. So that's kind of another big improvement to look forward to. And finally, one thing I'll leave you with is we have the up and down arrow history to find things in the previously executed commands. So you can scroll up through your history much like you can do in a terminal. And we're going to be shortly working on a new history feature, possibly in a sidebar where you can review the list of all your queries. But in the interim, and a pretty powerful feature that we've added, Control R on Mac, and I believe it's F9 on Windows, will bring up a fuzzy quick search for everything you've run before. So if I just scroll down there and look for something, maybe there's Jeff in a label there. So if I type JE, you'll see there that immediately finds me the kind of query that I'd written, presumably a different day in a different database as well, because I don't have that data in this database, to locate a pre-existing query. And it should be fuzzy as well. So you see I've mistyped purchase there, and it's still finding some of these purchased relationships. So this is I think people find that really useful. So you may have frantically been previously going up and down the up arrows trying to find something, or in browser you could run :history and then scroll through a list or manually search it. I think this is going to be a much neater way of being able to find your queries. So yeah, that's it for this installment. Thank you very much.